Hello, I'm Sam Marchand, your voice of the Muskies, here with our Athletic Director Dan Artamenko. And Dan, it's been kind of a whirlwind in your first year and a half here as Athletic Director at Lakeland. How would you describe the experience and what has stood out to you the most?
Yeah, I mean, whirlwind has definitely been the right word to use. It's definitely been hectic from a personal side. It took about 6 months for my wife to come up and get established with her position, and 6 months after that, we found out she was pregnant with baby number two. So it feels like it's been a never-ending circle of like trying to catch up on the personal side. But yeah, that first year, and it's hard to believe it's end of year two almost already. It's been great, and what really has stood out is you know what I felt when I came on to visit was the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
The location. I didn't know what it was going to be like, coming from different places, the facilities and, budgets, all those things. And what really stood out in my interview was the culture of the people, how supportive it felt, how like really wanted to raise a family, not just in the community, but on this campus.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget talking to the coaches in my interview of like, what's the department going to look like? And one of the things I said was, I expect every coach to know my son's name because he's going to be running around the fields. He's going to run around the courts, and I hope I get to know your sons and daughters' names. And
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know that was like the standard or whatnot, but sure enough, in the first few months, Coach Brun has his boy run in the gym shooting hoops. Coach Schaff has his two kids always
Mm-hmm.
around. They're always at the games.
Yep.
They're throwing the balls out on the court. I'm always trying to catch them so he doesn't get a yellow card or anything along those lines. And uh, that's exactly what I wanted, and it's lived up to that. And going into year two, it's like even diving deeper and deeper into that with every team. So that's what I really take away from the first year. It's just what it meant personally to connect and be part of something bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of been my culture of what I want to build here. It's going to be long term. It's going to take time because it's not going to be short term fixes, hot patches, and get out. We
Right.
want to build things the right way. I've talked a lot about connecting with alumni, and I mean that both in alumni today, but also future alumni.
Mm-hmm.
I want you in 5 to 10 years, be it you and I having a beer somewhere down in Chicago, or hopefully somewhere and it's like, hey, we're really trying to build that turf field.
Mm-hmm.
Hey Sam, how can you help us out now that you're with ESPN?
Yeah.
And you don't develop those things. Later on, you have to develop those today.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're doing is we're really developing a good relationship with everyone, and just we're going to keep building upon that year upon year, and then hopefully 10, 15 years from now, it's like we look back like, can you believe like this was a Muskie Mart
Yeah.
room, and we couldn't even use the concession stand. That's 1 year has made that difference. What
Yeah.
can 10 to 15 look like?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been so much success happening on the courts, off the courts, field, whatever you want to say. And what are some of the biggest highlights? Especially, you have women's volleyball hosting a conference
Yeah.
tournament game. You have a lot of teams making it to the conference tournament, basketball, and all the things. Like, what has been super impactful with the on the field, on the court success?
Yeah, it's been good. I was actually working on this project a little bit earlier. It's every one of our teams has basically seen a growth from over the last 2 to 3 years, and I think the coaches sometimes forget that because they're highly competitive
Mm-hmm.
and they want to win. They
Mm-hmm.
want to be the best. And I know Coach Schaff is very frustrated how maybe the playoffs went. But like you mentioned, first time hosting a playoff game,
Mm-hmm.
right? In a long time. First time both our basketball teams in a non-COVID year have made the playoff
Yeah.
together, and over about 5 years, I think it is. And, baseball and softball have been growing, and even soccer. We had the most, I think, home wins this year for men's soccer.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best records in the last 20 years. There's a lot of growth being created in the foundations of all the programs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been fun to see. I know the coaches kind of, you put in all that hard work. You want to see, a trophy at the end to maybe
Mm-hmm.
highlight that. But it's going to take some time, and just realize it's a process. It's year to year, and all of our teams are kind of recycling their roster structure from the COVID recruiting
Mm-hmm.
classes to the non-COVID recruiting
Mm-hmm.
classes, right? And I know as players, you maybe have seen that as your time. Those that came in were maybe pre-COVID and had a completely different experience, and so we're kind of blending ourselves out of that to having kind of all right, the 2026 incoming freshmen, like that's going to be completely different than anybody related to COVID.
Yeah.
Um, so it's been fun seeing that growth and stabilizing some of that. But yeah, on the court, the the volleyball team having their success, men's soccer, having some pretty good opportunities to beat some of the top teams, and be remiss to not mention the first place softball team right now. So.
Of course, of course. What has it been like to build those relationships with the student athletes? Obviously, they know you, your family, everything like that. You're a pretty active, guy on campus. What has it been like to build that relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is just be present.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I often say, especially in our sports world, everybody's day to day thing is the most important thing,
Hmm.
right? For you, for softball, this is one of the most important weeks, right?
Hmm.
But also our volleyball team is playing a spring scrimmages.
Yeah.
From the outside, it may not seem like, oh, it's a spring scrimmage. Well, they're also playing the national champion team on Friday, and
Hmm.
it's a good measuring stick to see how that team is progressing in their development. So this is a very big week for them,
Right.
right? And every team kind of has that moment where this is a big thing to us this today.
Hmm.
And so you can't really just pick and choose when you're present. It's just trying to be present all the time, the best I can. And yes, it's hard at home with
Hmm.
a baby to do that at times, but I think the students, they see you there.
Hmm.
I plan on participating in the dodgeball thing this Friday. I was at the events last week with the alumni and events last week, and you just find those moments where to be present and be available. Saturday was really cold out at the games, but
Hmm.
just being out there. So I think you do that. That's step one, because then people see each other, and
Yeah.
you can develop communication. And I think one thing I pride myself on is I eat in the cafeteria most days, right?
Hmm.
Like, you can't really connect with students if you're not willing to put yourself in the same spaces they're at.
Yeah.
Is the food always the best in there? No, but there are times that we can sit there and enjoy, a sizzling salad day together.
Yeah.
It's I think it's important to develop that relationship with students. Like, you have to know what a sizzling salad is at
Hmm.
Lakeland.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you don't have that relationship.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of little things like that on this campus. Like, you just need to know that and be there to know the experience. So that's how I kind of develop them out. And then kind of what we do in our department is we're all human in a
Hmm.
sense, right? We're all friends. We're all fathers, sons. We can all connect outside of the sports world, and I think our department does that pretty well.
Hmm.
You know, a former coach of ours, Mike Backhart, he puts together a little trip for us to go to the Brewers game in May, and the participation rate is great. That those things like that. We have our golf tournament in August where the departments together, and
Hmm.
just finding those spaces where you're not a coach, you're not the
Hmm.
AD, you're a friend, a family member, and stay connected in those spaces, and that makes the hard things easier to deal with. When you have to have the HR type
Yeah.
conversations, or some of the more difficult ones, it's you already have a relationship built up to know how that conversation can proceed. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's kind of how I build it. It takes time.
Yeah.
We got quite a few new coaches have come in over the last year or two, and it takes time to get them up to speed with Lakeland, the students, but also myself, other coaches. I've asked a few of the coaches to mentor some of our new coaches, and talk to them once a month.
Hmm.
Connect them. It's not really, I'll use like our new track coach. It's not that like men's basketball can really talk much about track, but our
Right.
men's basketball coach can talk. Hey, I shop at the Piggly Wiggly. Where do you shop at?
Hmm.
Because those little things add up,
Yeah.
and really help the coaches feel at home when they feel supported. They know what's going on, and they have a network that they can reach out to.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about kind of that vision and moving forward with the new coaches and that staff. What's your vision for Lakeland Athletics over the next year or two?
Yeah, I mean, we continually keep building brick by brick. One of the things I talked about my first month here is trying to raise a platform up. And
Hmm.
I talked about our goal for a freshman is maybe the platform is here today, but by the time they're a senior, it's here.
Hmm.
And what the word platform means, jumping off space, right?
Hmm.
So when you're a senior graduating and you're jumping out into the world, you're jumping from a higher spot. But also for a freshman, like coming in, you're not trying to rebuild the program. You're at a higher stage. It's a higher level of
Hmm.
expectation, a commitment to your craft, both in and out of the classroom. All those things are kind of raised up. So that's kind of the strategy. It's
Mm-hmm.
brick by brick, and some things, it's the concession stand is hey, we got a nice concession stand. We weren't using that when I got here
Yeah.
for valid reasons, and hey, let's raise the standard on that. And
Mm-hmm.
so now we got a nice space. Okay, we're just having hot dogs and popcorn.
Yeah.
But what's the next step? Could we have chili cheese dogs,
Yeah.
right? Like, can we have, we added nachos this year. You know, did adding nachos add a lot of revenue to us? Probably not. But kind of when you put it all together, like we did concessions out at soccer this
Mm-hmm.
year, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, after our quarter two, which is the end of the fall semester, we had already doubled the revenue of concessions from year to year. Like, and I can't say one specific thing; it just all adds up together.
Right.
And at the end of this year, we really expect to have double or triple the concession sales. And those are just little things. You do that for every area you're working on. Concessions, ticket sales, enrollment, retention, graduation rates, and just 1% here, 1% there. I talked to the coaches, man. If I could save 1 to 2% a year, that's basically six figures.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had an extra $100,000 to $200,000 to reinvest into our sports,
Mm-hmm.
like we would make change.
Yeah.
And on the top of that, 1% doesn't sound a lot, but
Right.
it adds up. 1% over 10 years is $1 million. So that's the way I kind of look at it. Is okay, how can we be a little bit better today? And sometimes it's hey, walking around picking up trash off the ground. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's your 1% for today. Other times it's bigger projects like this. It's trying to make some fundamental changes. So that 1% shows itself different ways every day. That's trying to be 1% better every day.
Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of success on the field, off the field for you, your family, all the things. But what has been your favorite moment so far as athletic director of the Muskies?
Wow, yeah, there's been a lot of memories already there in 2 years. You know, the homecoming both years kind of blew me away in a sense, just because of the pride, the community,
Mm-hmm.
and alums
Mm-hmm.
show. Um, it's the one day of the year that it all comes together perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And so the games themselves were, it's just, but really the culture of that. And both the first year you guys had alumni games,
Mm-hmm.
basketball had alumni games, groups, of alumni and coaches and students like went out in the community. I won't forget this year I went out afterwards, and there was a family member of the football team there, and it's just like it really connects Lakeland.
Mm-hmm.
So those, homecoming is definitely a very memorable space, just because that connects all those dots that I'm talking about. Um, I really enjoyed the crowd and the student support we got for our volleyball game,
Mm-hmm.
for the playoff game. Man, that
Mm-hmm.
was
That
wild,
was fun.
packed, loud. I've been at a lot of high level games and gyms, seen a lot of stuff, and the crowd for that game was top notch. And
Mm-hmm.
so I remember taking some photos and videos, sending them to some of my colleagues, and they're like, "Wow, Lakeland's like that, huh?" I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, "We can be like that,
Yes.
you know." Was it one game? Maybe next year we'll have 30 games like
Mm-hmm.
that, but that definitely stands out. So yeah, so those were kind of maybe the two of the sport related pieces. Outside of athletics, again, it's the blue and gold awards. We had those this week.
Mm-hmm.
We had that one last year. Kind of some of those connection points with students and outside of athletics and how it connects. And this campus being predominantly student athletes, being in some of those spaces outside of the sports world is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So.
absolutely. It's been a good first couple of years here for our athletic director and Dan Artamenko, and more coming. I'm Sam Marchant, your voice of the Muskies, Broskies.